Today's best music, 104.5 Sunny FM. Good morning. Ranger Bob with you. Looks like a beautiful day, at least for the next hour. Today's best music, 104.5 Sunny FM.
Hi, can you play that new Crash Test Dummy song?
You bet you we can. This one's called...
All right, so we're here with Ranger Bob, or Mark. I'm just going to call you Mark.
Okay.
Ranger Bob, everybody knows you're from Sunny FM. But how did your radio career get started, Prick?
I started, believe it or not, in high school.
Okay.
But before that, when I was in, I would say maybe third grade, my mom and dad gave me a radio for like a birthday. And I loved listening to this little Panasonic round radio that I had. And at night, I would have it by my bed, and I would listen to all these different radio stations at night. And I just thought it was so fascinating. And I liked listening to music, so I would just listen to music. And then when I got into high school, I used to make fun of the DJs on the radio around the house. I would, talk like a DJ, but never once did I think about being a DJ, because I just thought the music was cool. The DJs were awesome. They were cool. And a very popular girl in my class called up, and I remember my mom goes, "Hey, it's Corey Lindell on the phone." And I'm like, I don't want to talk. So I get to the phone, and she goes, "Hey, listen, I work at this little radio station, 1240 WATT in Cadillac, Michigan." And I said, "Yeah." And they're looking for a part-timer, and I was wondering if you'd be interested. Oh, me? Nah, that's okay, thanks, click, and just hung up.
How did she get your name?
Well, she knew me in school.
Oh, okay.
And apparently there was something I was doing in school that she thought, hey, that guy might be kind of,
funny. Yeah.
I guess, I don't know. And so my mom was standing there, she goes, well, what did she say? Well, she said they have a part-time job open at WATT. You said no? You call her back right now. And so I did. I called her back, and I said, I guess I'll try that. And it was McDonald Broadcasting, and there was a guy named Andy McDonald who was the program director / station manager. I went in for an interview, didn't even do an on-air audition, nothing, and got my first part-time job at this really cool little AM radio station. It played top 40 music, which was right in my wheelhouse. It was perfect. We had 45s and albums. It had the turn pots, but I wasn't on the air officially. I usually ran the God Squad stuff Sunday mornings.
Oh, yeah.
So you'd run the church programs, and then there was usually the Casey Kasem's top 40 on the albums.
Oh, yeah.
And and I'd always put the wrong side of the album down. So you'd go from song, we'll be back after this, and you'd come back and you'd go from 33 to like 10.
Yeah.
Go, and you'd have to figure out how do I turn that album over, because that's the side I got to be on. And so I learned a lot there. We even had to turn the transmitter on and off. It was right in the room next door, and I was just 17, and I was awful. I was so bad when I got on the air that Sunday mornings, I think between 6 and 7, I could actually play music and officially DJ, and I was so bad. My parents never listened to me. They were totally embarrassed and never mentioned to anybody that I was on the radio. Ever. So I was there for a couple of years, and then I finally got, I got a little bit better, and I would do the Saturday night stuff, and it was one of those things where it was a small house with a mobile home pushed up next to it for the sales department, and a little AM station. We did a lot of really, little funny things. One of my favorite things was I remember one time when Pac-Man Fever came out.
Oh, yeah.
They sent us a ton of records, and there was some really good DJs on. In fact, a lot of the DJs that worked there eventually went on to like Detroit. Like their next job was Detroit. I don't know how that happened, but the station kind of groomed a lot of really, really good folks. We sat out back and threw that 45 into the AM tower bowl thing that was kind of set up, and trying to see who could throw the Pac-Man Fever, because we couldn't give it away. Nobody wanted it. And then I went off to college because I didn't think radio was going to be what I wanted to do. When I worked at that little radio station, every single guy that worked there lived in the same house because they couldn't afford to have rent. Right. And I thought, I don't want to live in a house with a bunch of dudes the rest of my life. I mean, there's just no way. And that's how small my life was. I never even thought about, hey, there are guys out there that are making an okay living and living in their own houses. So I decided to go off to college and get into computers. Failed miserably doing that. Went up to Traverse City to college, and they actually they kicked me out. And my parents did the best thing you could ever imagine a parent could do. When I came home, I told them that I wasn't gonna be going to school, and they're like, "What are you gonna do?" I don't know. I just thought I'd sit around here, and And they're like, "No, you're not." And they kicked me out of the house.
Yeah.
And I went and I was offered a full-time job at that little AM station. They were finally going to go from midnight to 6 because they would sign off. And it was going to be $600 a month, which I thought was a gargantuan amount of money. And of course, I didn't have a car. So now I'm walking home to tell my parents what's going on. And I walk by the Army recruiting station. And I go in there because my mom said, I don't care what you do. You're not living here. Join the Army. You're not staying here. And I went in there, and believe it or not, the guy behind the counter was like, well, so you think you got a full-time job? Yeah, I got a full-time job. Everything's going to be great, but I just want to see what you guys have, and I'm sure I'm not going to sign up. He goes, well, let's break down that $600 a month. We hadn't even gotten to food.
Yeah.
And I was out of money. I'm like, okay, sign me up. So I did the Army for 2 years.
Okay.
One of the best things I ever did. And there was nothing going on. And the job I had was in artillery, so I was going to be 60 miles behind the front line if anything happened. And I was in from 84 to 86, and there was nothing going on. But I was smart. I got the college fund so I could go back to school. And then I also was stationed in Germany, and I had that all guaranteed on this little sheet. So I spent a year and a half in Germany, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. When I came back out, I decided to go to school in Lansing, not MSU, but Lansing Community College. And the money that the Army gave you was pretty neat. When you signed up for the college fund, as long as you were in school, they would give you money. I came out with $15,000 that I could use for school. Wow. And you just had to be in school. And this is how many credits you had, and they would pay you. I was making $700 a month for going to school, $16 a credit hour, and I rented a room from a lady there in Lansing for $185. And so I was actually making money while I was going to school, and I got a part-time job at a little teeny radio station there, and I don't know why I got the job. I guess I just wanted something to do. And then while I was there, there was another radio station that this station was fighting against. And the ratings came out, and the station that I was at, and I was only doing overnights, the other station that beat them sent them a coffin with a bunch of dead roses in it. I mean, a full coffin, had it delivered to their lobby with like, hey, we just smoked you, good luck, goodbye. And I was like, who sent that? And on it said WVIC, 95 FM. And
VIC.
Yeah.
All right.
And I was like, well, that's the station I listen to all the time.
Yeah.
Rich Michaels was on in the morning. There was Monica Harris did middays. Danny Douglas did nights. There was a guy named Hollywood Hendricks that did nights. Even the overnight guy was unbelievable. Mark Maloney was the program director, and I just applied for a job, and it was the best interview I'd ever had in my life. And he hired me on the spot. They had 5 part-timers, and I was by far the worst. Absolutely the worst part-timer. And he even said that. He goes, but we're going to make you better. And he would air check me, and in a matter of, I would say, 6 months, I was the number 1 part-timer. And they would call me in to fill in the middle of the day. And I was just blown away. This is going to be great, but I'm still going to school, and I don't think I'm going to be a DJ. But then the money runs out, and I finally get my associate's degree. And I'm bummed because I'm like, I don't want to be in computers. And I really like radio. And somebody said to me, well, why do you want to get into computers? And I said, well, because you can make a lot of money. Yeah. Well, and in radio, I don't think you can. And they said, well, why don't you just do this? Do what you like, and then don't worry about the money. Just do what you like and see if that works. I told my parents that's what I was going to do, and they were horrified. Yeah. And that motivated me. Well, if you guys are going to be horrified, then I'll go ahead and try it. So one day, and at VIC, I got to the point where I would work 18 hours on Sunday.
Wow.
So that I'd give all the other DJs a chance to sort of have a weekend off. So I'd get there at 6 a.m., run all the stuff. At 1 o'clock, I'd go in the van, give out stickers, and then I'd come back then somebody would do like the 1 to 4 shift. I'd come back at that and then finish up the day. One of the guys that was filling in called himself Fred the Big Boss Man Anderson. I had no idea who he was, but I was talking to him and he was like, what's going on? I said, well, I'm done with school and I think I want to get into radio. And I asked Mark Maloney about a full-time job at VIC, but he says, actually, you're more valuable to me as a part-timer than you are a full-timer. You're not going to get a full-time job here. And I'm like, so I guess I have to go find another job at another radio station somewhere, but I really don't, know what to do. Fred's like, what you need to do? There's a guy named Chuck Finney, who is the corporate program director for Goodrich Broadcasting. And you need to talk to him, and he's going to be in tomorrow, Monday. Maybe he can help you out. Thanks, Fred. So next day I come in and I go to the receptionist and say, and she doesn't even know who I am because I only work on the weekends, right?
Right.
I go, I'm so-and-so, and is Chuck around? Oh, yeah, he's in the conference room. I go into the conference room and there's nobody there, but you can kind of see where somebody is set up, they're kind of working there. And I'm just kind of standing there, and all of a sudden, Fred walks in. I'm like, Fred? He's like, hi, my name's Chuck Finney. I'm like, what? So Fred was Chuck, and he goes, what are you doing this afternoon? I go like, well, nothing. Come with me. 2 hours later, we're in the parking lot at Sunny FM.
Okay.
And we go inside, and I go like, what's going on? He goes like, I want to see if you want a job. I'm like, okay. And he goes, and I get out. He goes, no, we're not going into the station. We drove to the beaches. We went to all the hot beaches.
Yeah.
He's trying to sell me on the area, and so I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. What's the position? He goes, well, don't worry about it, And I had a goal back at VIC that in 1 year I was going to be an overnight guy somewhere. In 5 years, maybe a midday guy. In 10 years, the production director, because I learned about commercial production by watching the guy there. And so we got back to the radio station. We walk in and he goes, I need you to do one thing. I need you to go into the production studio. I need you to make a commercial. I'm like, okay. As I'm walking to the studio, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how to make a commercial. I've never made one before. I've just watched the guy in Lansing make one. And I don't know anything about studios, to tell you the truth, recording and all that. I walk into the studio and I was like, oh, thank goodness. It was an exact carbon copy of what was in Lansing. Yeah. And I'm like, this is going to work. I made this commercial. It was awful. Bad. And I played it for Chuck. And Chuck goes, is this going to be the worst commercial you ever make? I go, I promise. Everyone after this will be much better. And he goes, okay, you got the job. I go, what is it? He goes, you're the midday guy, production director. So I'd gone through goal, 1 year goal, 5 year goal, and 10-year goal, all in a matter of 2 hours on an afternoon. And that's how it started. I started March 28th, 1989 at Sunny, and it was my first full-time radio job.
See, that's when I was there, and I can't believe that you were that raw. You blew us all away.
I was as green, and seeing that surprises me to hear that, because I would be in that studio for hours, or I'd be on the air and then afterwards be air checking myself or trying to get somebody to air check me, thinking, oh man, I'm not fitting in. This is not going to work. This isn't going to happen. But nobody ever said anything to me. Everything I did, everyone was like, yeah.
Spring Fever Party. Everything kicks off at 9. Luke Sanders is your host. While you're there, sign up to win accommodations in Orlando or Hilton Head. Yeah, Gippers tonight. Today's best music, 104.5. Sunny FM celebrating Tulip Time with the Dutch Treat Weekend. Listen for those touch tunes to win dinner for one at J.J. Finnegan's and one movie pass to the Star Theater in Holland. To win them, you'll just have to pucker up and give us a great big kiss with your tulips.
Satellite weather.
Well, it looks like we're stuck with a little light rain here today. High around 57. Tonight, things begin to clear up. We drop down to 36, and tomorrow, yes! Sunny and a high of 65. It's 47 in Grand Rapids, 47 in Holland, 48 in Muskegon.
104.5 Sunny FM.
But the whole Ranger Bob name thing came up because Chuck, of course, when I started, Mark Frost
Okay.
was on after me, and I'm Mark Erickson. Can't have two Marks back to back. I think that's some sort of radio rule, right?
Yeah.
That's some sort of national thing. So Chuck Finney,
You got Rip rule. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Chuck goes, "Hey, listen, we can't use Mark, so here's what we're going to do. I want you to use the name Kelly Green."
Okay.
And he goes, "What do you think?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "That's a color. It's not even a name, right?" And he goes like, "You don't like it?" And I go like, No. And I said, "Can I go think about it?" He goes, Yeah, go think about it. And as I'm walking out his office, I say, "I can think of a zillion names that are better than that. Ranger Bob's a way better name than that." And that was my nickname in the Army.
Okay.
And that's another long story for another video. But anyways, I got that in the Army, and I'm not a Ranger. And of course, my name wasn't Bob. So the Ranger was for how bad I was at being in the military, right? Slamming. And Bob was so we just changed our names when we went to the bar so the German girls couldn't hunt us down
Oh.
at the thing. So Ranger Bob.
Kind of works for radio too.
It kind of does, yeah.
Yeah.
So I go down to my office and I'm trying to figure out how to do radio. And about 5 minutes later, he yells down the office, "Go with Ranger Bob. That's a great name. Go with that." And I'm like, okay. So that's kind of how that, but I never actually, I wish I had played off of it more. I wish I had wore camo or did something with it, but I never did anything with it. And
Had Yogi and Boo Boo as your sidekick.
nothing. I never did anything like that. Right. I mean, I really should have done something with it, but that's how I ended up at Sunny. That was just kind of again, things just kind of fell into, and I must have impressed just the right people at just the right time. In fact, Chuck even offered me a job to go to the oldie station in Grand Rapids just 8 months after I got to Sunny to be the assistant program director, and I turned it down because I didn't think I was ready.
Really?
Yeah. I hadn't figured out this midday production director thing yet. I was like, I'm not done. I still have enough to do. And the other side of it too was I really found out when I was there, just within a short amount of time, how much I loved being in the production room. I couldn't get enough of it.
Oh, yeah?
And the great thing about it was most everybody who works in radio hates it. And I actually, to tell you the truth, the worst part of the radio job for me is I hate being on the air live.
Yeah.
Hate it.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. Remotes and appearances are the absolute worst.
Yeah.
I'm nervous. I just mentally freak out. I'm just, it's just awful. So the production studio was kind of like my sanctuary. I was like, I could do whatever I wanted in here. You're playing with all this equipment. You're playing with music. You're editing. You're doing all this stuff. And I just devoured it.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a couple of, like when the commercials would roll in for concert spots. Bill Young was a guy that did the guy with the big, giant, deep voice.
Right.
I'd be like, that's what I want to do. I want to be Bill Young making concert spots.
Yeah.
So anytime back in the day when somebody would come to the Muskegon, like the Valdoo Lakes or whatever, once in a while I get a chance to make a concert spot, and I was like, oh, this is great. And I would pitch my voice and try to make it sound deeper, and I'd do all this.
We had the voice picture there.
Yeah, we had that harmonizer. Yeah. And I would even take the 4-track and I would turn it into a 5-track using that. Is it that Eventide? That thing had a weird thing in it where you could sort of make if you ran something through it, you could turn the 4th track into a stereo track.
Okay.
And so I would sort of mess around with that and try to do things. And I would put tape on the spindle so that stuff would speed up and slow down. And I would just, doing crazy stuff. And so that's what I did. And Jeannie Vollmer was the copywriter. And so the commercials would come in, and if it needed to be written, she would write it, and then I'd go in and either do it myself or assign it to somebody. And if I had to get extra voices, just grab people from around the radio station.
Oh, yeah.
And the neat thing about Sunny FM at that time too was that it seemed like everybody that was in that building, at least when I was there, I always thought everybody was way better than me, but I thought everybody was the best person I had ever. They were like that, like JoJo. He was the morning guy.
Yeah,
he was great at it. And Chris Thompson in the afternoon was awesome. He was just the perfect. And the night guys, Sweet Lou Mitchell and Luke Sanders, were just perfect for that. And even the office manager, Lisa Snell,
Yeah.
she was the greatest office manager, and we always seemed to have just the right people in the right spot. And Jeannie was one of those that she could write copy, and she did the promotions and things of that sort, and would make things happen. The ideas, I don't know where the ideas came for a lot of our promotions and the things that we did. But she would, hey, we need a helicopter because we're going to be dropping stuff out of here to do bovine bingo, and and we'd have to make the promos with the cows crapping, and it was, it's just great, trying to find sound effects.
I
right?
remember that commercial. I remember a promo. Yeah, I remember that.
And she would found a helicopter, and then we went out and dropped stuff into a big giant field, and then there was the pie in the face thing that we did.
But I remember the one that I was involved with was the Hands on Boat one.
That one was one of the first ones, and I remember how scary it got because I went out there for like one shift, and these people were standing on pillows because their feet were starting to hurt, and it was and they wouldn't give up.
No,
and they would stay there. And how many days was that? That was like
it was 3, I think.
Yeah, and and these people, I thought at one point we actually thought about, I think if I understood it right, we were talking about canceling it, because we thought these people were actually going to kill themselves, trying to do this. And I remember I was there when the guy took his hand off. And it was so funny because he was talking, I don't know who he was talking to somebody. So he's, he had his hand there and he's talking and gesturing, and then he goes, like this, and then he puts his hand back on. And we all stood there and went, I think he took his hand off, and nobody knew what to do. And then they finally went, you took your hand off. And, it wasn't anything really super dramatic. He just happened to be talking to somebody and took his hand off. And I just thought that was weird. But,
they got so tired too that they didn't know what they were doing anymore.
And I remember they had 5-minute breaks once an hour.
Something like that.
Yeah. And and I just, that was crazy. But that was also the neat thing about, working at Sunny was the stuff we did, we just did it, and I still can't figure out why we did it. What?
Maybe because Goodrich was such a good lawyer, I guess.
I guess, and I don't know if this was all modeled after what was going on in Lansing, because at first I saw the similarities right away with what was going on, but in Lansing, that was a much bigger market, making I don't even remember how much money they were pulling in, but the money there was unbelievable. In fact, I got a chance one day. This is where I changed my mind about being in radio. I was there late one night, and the program director had left his door unlocked, and he had the spreadsheet of what everybody made at the station. And at that time, I'm kind of looking, the overnight guy was making 32, which I thought was like, whoa, the overnight guy? Yeah. What's the morning guy making? So I go down to the bottom, $139,000.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? Maybe radio isn't such a bad thing to try. So yeah, that was my first full-time job. Just being dumped in there with all these great people, and a ton of great people came through and really helped me out. Haas Montana was the actual official first program director I was under, but the guy that really helped me out was the next guy, Jim Richards. And Jim was there, I don't know if it was 2 years or 3 years, and I don't know if most people know who he is unless you actually work there. But Jim was phenomenal. As a program director, just unbelievable. And he was very, very committed to just pushing the envelope all the time. And he would push it until somebody told him to stop, and nobody ever told him to stop. We did stuff. There was even a time where somebody had put up a bunch of billboards promoting that something was going to happen, and we actually sort of stole the billboards. And I don't know, I can't remember what radio station it was. I don't know if it was...
It had to be MUS, right?
I don't know if it was MUS or if it was KBZ or who it was, but the way they put the billboards up, it was like, they didn't actually identify what it was.
Oh.
So as stuff would go up, We would
okay.
hey,
Yeah,
keep an eye on our billboards for,
Yeah.
and I can't remember, somebody lost their mind. I think we got sued for that. But that's kind of the way we operated. Do something until somebody tells you not to, or till somebody gets upset. And of course, after talking with you and watching some of the other videos, I had no idea that the other radio stations in town, how they felt about us.
They hated Sonny.
I had,
hated him.
I had no idea. And you know what? If they had worked there, they would have loved it. Oh yeah. And you worked there, and right?
The dumbest thing I ever did was leaving there. But
well, and
Louis even told me, he says, "Don't leave here. You got to stick around. This is way too much fun."
I kind of wish that I hadn't left. But I tell you, and JoJo kind of covered it, in his other video. Everything evolves, and the management changed, and they did some. Bob Goodrich hired some people that just didn't. It was just you obviously tell that things were changing, kind of like I think what happened when the first regime that we sort of, I think something happened with like the Biggins and all the other people there.
Right. Yeah.
I think something had changed. And I don't know.
Wasn't happy there. I know
something.
that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it had anything to do with we had like Chuck Finney was the corporate program director, and I believe we also had another guy named Jeff Scarpelli, who was I think he was the head honcho of everybody, and maybe that's what changed. But I think it happens in radio, and you've been to radio stations. I'm sure that it's cool for a moment, and then it it just naturally changes. And
many. I've been to many.
You've been to a lot, and that's the other thing too, which I find interesting is I thought I was going to be the guy that was going to be jumping around, and I was
if
there.
If you would have stayed in Muskegon, you would have been.
I probably would have, and I thought I was going to stay in Muskegon, and I was at Sunny for 6 years, and then. Lucky enough to get over to MUS, which was a completely different, it was a great experience, but a completely different animal from what I was used to. But I thought it was a great experience just because, because my experience with radio stations pretty much had been, every radio station is just like Sunny.
Right.
That's what I thought. And I thought, this is going to be great. Everybody, and it's not. It's completely different. And that's okay, and that's fine. So I stayed there for about a year and a half, and then I got 2 job offers at the same time. And one was Jim Richards, my old program director, had gone off, and he had tried to get me to go to Knoxville for a while, but then he ended up in Cincinnati. And one of my dream stations that I listened to as a little kid was 700 WLW.
Okay.
Massive frequency. It goes to 48 states, Canada and Mexico, 50,000 watts. It's just enormous. And they were doing news talk at the time, and it was pretty revolutionary. Like it was, I wouldn't say it was shock jockish, but they were trying to just poke at everybody and try to, news talk was just starting to sort of take off as kind of a format. This is kind of like when, Rush Limbaugh sort of took off. They were kind of trying to do some stuff there. And there was also another iconic radio station there, 102.7 WEBN. And it's not iconic to most people, but to me it was because the guy who did the imaging and the commercial production there, I thought was like, this guy was phenomenal. And if I could go down there and just sit in the studio and watch what this guy does. I don't even want to talk to him. Can I just watch what he does? That would be great. But I also got a job to go work B93, and I got offered a position to go be the commercial production director there. And believe it or not, I was offered the same amount of money to go to both places. But I had a feeling, since I was already in a country station, and that was another country station, that I wouldn't like it as much. So I begged my wife, who by this time I'd met at the radio station there, Jennifer. She was the receptionist
at Sunny.
At Sunny,
okay.
At Sunny, and we had been married for about 4 years. I begged her for 2 years if we could just please go to Cincinnati, because I wanted to see if I could make it in a big market. I thought, okay, I think I've done all I can do here, but can I do the same thing there?
Right.
And so I went off. She gave me the 2 years, which turned into 24. And I went there, and it worked out. It worked out great. And I did some stuff in radio that I never dreamed I'd ever do, and made, the kind of money that I never thought I could make. Started doing voice work and imaging work, freelance on the side. And, to this day now, I voice about 10 radio stations. I do car dealership spots all over the country. I'm the image voice for a TV network in Singapore. And I do a lot of online stations, imaging and stuff like that all around the world. So it's interesting. But even that time in Cincinnati, I got to see the evolution of radio with like voice tracking and automation. And the neat thing about being in Cincinnati is that the corporate entity for Clear Channel and iHeartRadio, the engineering people were there. So anything that came out that was new, they tried it out in our building.
Okay.
So we were always trying out brand new equipment, which was just, for a geek like me, it was was, oh man, you got to be kidding. And one of the guys actually sat across the hallway from me, and you would hear him on the phone. And they'd be asking him, we want to do this, we want to do that. And some of the stuff they were asking him to do was like, I didn't know you could do that. You can't. How could you possibly, how can you have a disc jockey be here and voice track to San Diego and all of that? So I got to kind of see a lot of that stuff happen there, but it wasn't as much fun as Sunny. That was a ride. That was a ride and a half.
Yeah, because I was going to say, what's your favorite station? But I think we pretty much established that.
That was the station I went to down in Cincinnati. That was my first time with classic rock. And I really loved, in fact, I didn't even know I liked classic. I was a top 40 guy. In fact, and at Sunny, that era between 89 and 94 for top 40 music was awesome.
Yeah.
Big Hair was coming out. The grunge stuff kind of started. I wasn't a big grunge fan, but I thought the music there was, we played all the stuff from the 80s, and I was on cloud nine. It was,
and the rap too.
Yeah, and the rap was good.
Yeah. Wild Thing and
all of yes, and it was just fantastic. And I just thought, I actually working at a radio station that I would listen to. I never listened to anything else other than the station that I was on, and I think that's pretty rare for a guy to actually work at a station that he likes. But the classic rock station, when I got to the classic rock station down there, I was like, man, I totally missed out. I didn't even, believe it or not, I had never heard of Led Zeppelin until I got to Cincinnati.
Okay.
Because they were never really a top 40 radio station. No. And I was like, wow, there's this whole other genre of music that I've never even heard of. And so it was like rediscovering the wheel. I was like, this is great,
The rock you grew up with. 106.3 The Facts. KDGE, HD2, Fort Worth, Dallas. An iHeartRadio original station. Giving you the most music for your pleasure. Back then, you looked for some killer weed. Now you look for some weed killers. Brattleboro's Rock Station. 99.5 The Beast. Non-stop rock workout radio. For far too long, something's been missing from FM radio in Rochester. Something timeless. Something classic.
Where's it located?
107.5.
Right here.
The Bear. Time to restart the rock. It's another long block of classic rock on 107.5 WAVX. There's a fine line between genius and insanity. We've erased this line. Brattleboro's Rock Station, 99.5 The Beast.
There wasn't any, no, in fact, we could barely pick up LAV. In fact, I had a friend who had a fancy stereo with a wire that went way up into a tree, and we would go over and listen to LAV once in a while. But again, it barely came in, so I thought, LAV was, that would be okay, but it's not top 40, and top 40 was great. And I thought the music that we played at Sunny was just awesome. And when I got there, what I also thought was cool about Sunny FM was that if you asked 10 people, listeners, what kind of a radio station we were, you'd get 10 different answers. This was before the time when radio stations told you
what they were,
what we were. Yeah. And we had, the share I remember one time seeing we had a 25 share in the market, and MUS had their 17. It just seemed they always had 17, but and they were a powerhouse. But we had this giant thing. And I remember at one point we all of a sudden started changing what we said. And I remember asking, because I had to make the imaging in between the songs, like, why are we telling everybody we're Muskegon's better music mix or whatever it is?
Because it was play the hits, wasn't it?
Well, there's today's, gosh, it went through, there was so many things. It was like, what, Sunny FM,
it was a new Sunny FM for a long time.
when I got there, it was the new Sunny FM, and everybody would make fun of that. Yeah, you're not new anymore. So I think we went to Sunny FM and dropped the new. Then we also stopped focusing in on like Holland and Grand Rapids, because I remember we would do the beach reports with that jingle, and we would give the temperatures for those three cities. And then all of a sudden we stopped. And even the phone number, we didn't even give. We used to have a 1-800 number, I think, that was worked for everywhere. We got rid of that. So there was no Grand Rapids, no Holland. It was just Muskegon. And what I found out is that even though we had this giant share, most of the advertisers believed that we were just a kids station and that only kids listened to us.
Oh.
And as an advertiser, they were like, kids don't shop at our store. We will buy advertising as soon as we hear, adults listening to the radio station. Yeah. So we stopped putting kids on the air and only recorded adults to play back. And then they were like, well, you guys are kind of a Grand Rapids Holland station, we're a Muskegon. And so then we basically turned the programming towards the advertisers. Right. And that's where I saw it kind of go in a direction that was like, okay, this is fascinating. I forgot that radio was anybody that's
well, you would at Sunny FM.
Because I don't remember anything. I never remember anybody talking about, how much money we were making, how much money it was taking to actually, do what we did. Yeah. We just did what we did, and it was just. I would go back in a heartbeat if somebody picked it up and said, I would beg to actually go back there. And I had that little midday shift from like 10 to noon. And so that was perfect. I could just come in there and kind of, spend a couple of hours just doing some stuff, do my 4-hour shift on a Saturday. Other than that, it was, working the commercials. You were just working for one radio station. It wasn't this overwhelming, stuff. And then eventually they brought rock on, which I thought that was really cool when they brought that station in. And the people they had over there, the people that were so much talent, even in that, even the program director, his name was Dusty, but I can't remember what his last name was.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Dusty actually, believe it or not, and I was one of these guys that I like to listen to a lot of bootleg tapes.
That was Gene Gregory the morning at the time.
Gene did, right? Yes, yeah. And he even came over to MUS at one point.
Oh yeah.
And Dusty was the program director. He was actually the midday guy after the Grease Man on DC 101. And I would go in and talk to him about the Grease Man. And so Dusty, this guy came from Washington, D.C. to work in Muskegon. Yeah. And then Duffy in the afternoon, who he was incredibly talented, great voice, creative. He would go into the production studio because he did all the imaging for the rock station. And there was one thing where I remember Rich Bush, I believe, was the night guy, and Duffy did afternoons. And they were giving away some sort of a trip to go see a NASCAR race.
Okay.
And the promo basically made it sound like that you were going to be so close to the action, it was like being duct taped to the hood of the car. And Duffy actually put Rich, what it sounded like on the radio, actually it made it sound like he had duct taped him to a NASCAR, and it was going around the track, and you'd hear Rich yelling his brains out. Of course he wasn't, but it sounded just like that. I was like, oh! So I started learning a lot of stuff from him. He's now at WGN in Chicago, doing commercial and imaging work there. So a lot of the people that were at Sunny at that time too went off to do these enormous things. Chris Thompson does mornings in San Francisco. JoJo went off to Baltimore. Jim Richards, the program director, he went off to be, he programmed in New York City, Chicago, Seattle, San Francisco, really went really high up the food chain there. Haas Montana is the vice president of some major conglomerate somewhere out in, a lot of these folks went on to do amazing things. And, and even the people that were there who decided maybe, radio wasn't going to be what they did, were just the perfect people at the right time, at the right moment. The little nuances, like Luke Sanders was on at nights. The guy never wore shoes. And I just thought that was like the weirdest thing. Like, well, that guy he does everything in bare feet, and it was
That was
weird.
Mark Dixon too. He did,
Okay. Yeah. See, there was all these neat little things that happened there, and this all brings back great memories.
Yeah. What about as far as stories go? What are some of your favorites that you can actually tell on that?
We had one of the theories I had about our ratings is that when the weirdos showed up at your events or at your radio station, you were doing the right things. And we had a guy show up one day, and I have no idea what he was doing or what we were doing, but I came to work and there was a guy standing right outside the door wrapped in Christmas tree lights, and he was looking for an outlet. And he found one, and he plugged himself in, and he called himself the Christmas tree guy. And this guy would show up like for weeks and just stand there during the morning show until JoJo would talk to him, and JoJo could talk to him through the intercom system. Yeah. And you could play it on the air.
Yeah.
And so we had the Christmas tree guy would show up, and so that was kind of a good one. We had a scare. This is one of my favorite stories because it makes me laugh because of what JoJo did. So the receptionist gets a phone call from somebody saying, hey, a friend of mine is off of his medication and he's coming to your radio station and he wants to take it over. You might not want to let him in the building. So she jumps up to run to the door, and he had just got there and just got in. Now this guy is completely, it's winter out time, but he is sweating and he's in camo gear. And he comes in and he says, I want to talk to the program director about your radio station. I'd like to change the format of it and you take it over. And the receptionist is like, okay, why don't you just have a seat right there and I'll get the program director. So she then relays to the program director that, hey, this guy's off his meds and he wants to take over the radio station. And while she's telling him that, she says to her, while she's on the phone talking to the program director, by the way, I have all the music. I have 3 large trash bags full of cassettes. And we got another phone call back from somebody else who said, oh, by the way, he has weapons in his trunk.
Oh, geez.
So you might want to watch out what's going on. So now all of this is going on up front, and I have no idea because I'm back in the production studio, and JoJo's back in his office, which is kind of near where the production studio was. And all of a sudden, I walk out front, and everybody kind of looks weird. And I see this guy sitting there, and I kind of lean over, like, what's going on? This guy wants to take over the radio station. I'm like, what? Yeah, he's got cassettes, he's got music, he's got everything. I go like, oh, okay. So I go back and I tell JoJo. And then I find out, I go up that this guy's maybe he's got weapons in his car. So JoJo, I see him through the window of the studio sneaking around, he was going to go into the conference room and save, I think it was Haas Montana, actually sat down with this guy in the conference room, and JoJo was sneaking around the building to try to see if he could help because he thought Haas was in trouble. Yeah. The funny part was Haas was so smooth. He gets him into the conference room and he goes, what, so you want to take over? He goes, yeah, I want to take over the radio station. I want to take it over right now. And Haas is like, I think that's a great idea. What kind of format are you talking about? He goes, we're going hard rock, heavy metal. It's going to be awesome. Great. Haas goes, before we do that, we have to design a bumper sticker. And the guy's like, what? Well, we can't do this without bumper stickers. The guy's like, you're right. So they start designing a bumper sticker. In the meantime, we had called the police. Yeah. And they had shown up. And by golly, he did. He had 3 big, large trash bags full of cassettes. He had a shotgun, a 9mm, and a crossbow in his car. But that's when our ratings were the absolute best. When we had people like that just show up out of the blue and just do crazy stuff. I remember doing.
Was that like a story on? Did you talk it out?
We never talked about it.
Never talked about it.
I think this is probably the first time anybody's ever said anything about it. Huh. I don't remember the guy's name. And nobody got hurt. And I don't even think he was even arrested. But it's a funny story. We did. I thought one of the funnest things we ever did was Pepsi Dance Tracks, the TV show, and they actually came out to Grand Haven Beach. Yeah, and 4 of us each did a half-an-hour show. And I still have that really lame VCR tape of it, and it's the worst TV I've ever seen in my life. And you
haven't seen some of the shows I put together for TV 40.
We did that. I thought that was so cool that here we were on TV. Of course, just doing the the going out to the beaches and doing all the stuff out there. I'm trying to think if there's any funny stories that I remember. Somebody was talking about trying to get drops off of movies. And I'm like, what, are you having problems getting drops? He goes, yeah, how do you get drops off, especially the newer ones? Yeah. And I'm like, well, you either got to wait for the VCR to come out, or if you're smart like me, and your radio station is right next door to the Getty 4.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
You tune into their frequencies and record all of their movies.
Yeah.
And I used to record all the movies to get drops and stuff off of that. And people thought I was like, what? Yeah.
JoJo used to love using the drops. Yeah.
Yeah. We'd just do all of that.
I never thought of that though either.
No, it was funny because
movie theater right next door.
It's right next door, and in fact, I even at one point I remember I went past. I wanted to see what was down that street because I'd never gone any farther than the radio station. So I drove down and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, the Getty, and it said frequencies. I'm like, no, whoa, really cool.
That's right, you can do it right there.
The other thing that I used to do is sometimes if I worked late at night, when we changed the frequency of the AM station over, it was it was circular in the daytime, but then at night it was like 20 feet wide, and it went about 10 miles this way and that way. And in fact, I even remember people across the street would complain like their toaster would be they'd hear the radio station like through their toaster and all that. But I remember one time there was so much RF from the frequency coming into the studio at night that I would actually shut down the AM station just to do commercial production.
Okay.
Yeah. Nobody ever said anything, but that was always something. And then for a while there, I was the program director of the little AM. We actually split the signals when Rock came on board with their frequency. Sunny was still on 104.5, and then we were also on 1600.
Right.
And we split that 1600 off and made that an all sports station, just satellite driven by a little. I don't know where this computer came from.
And you got to remember though, 1600. That was like the huge station WTRU. Back in the day,
which I'm finding out by watching your videos. I had no idea that was, and a lot of
terrible. It's a terrible signal too.
At night. Yeah. I mean, it was. I remember driving home, and I think I'd get maybe a mile or two from the transmitters and from the sticks. I couldn't hear a thing, and I remember we had to program this radio station, and it was all automated off of this satellite. And I remember it was just a little box and this computer. I don't know where we got this computer. This was like, we must have gotten it from NASA back in the 60s. But I remember it never worked correctly. And I always had to put these commands in to force the signal back to where it needs to be. And I remember someone was looking at the log one day and they go like, dude, you're forcing the station back to the satellite thing every minute. I go, yeah, I have to, because I never know what's going to happen. So this thing was, you could barely hear it every minute. There'd be a kind of a little hiccup, but that kept the station kind of pointed in the right direction. And I remember when I got the job, the market manager there, Tim Helsing, goes, hey, I'm going to make you program director. We're going to give you $600 to do that. And I was like, yeah, $600. And then somebody came to me and said, that's only $5 a week. But we ran, Muskegon Fury games on that.
Okay.
I could do whatever I wanted to with the imaging. I remember, the station hardly got any ratings.
Right.
So I would make sweepers making fun of that, like we're the #1 radio station on the Arbitron golf course. Touting the fact that we've got no ratings. So, again, nobody said anything. I could just kind of do whatever you wanted to and all of that. So, lots of,
And then, like I say, and then you think that it was like the #1 station here in Muskegon was TRU.
Yeah. And that's the history of that station. And I don't even know when TRU came on board.
I don't either. 60-something.
Just to think of all the people that have been on that. And in fact, I was talking to a relative of mine just today about it. And I right away said, do you remember a station? He's like, yeah. I mean, that thing was enormous.
Yeah. Fred Tascone, he's 92, 93 now. And,
I had no idea. And I was really surprised that when they moved the Sunny frequency, I don't know if they moved it, but moving the operation to Grand Rapids, I would have never guessed in a million years that would have worked. When I heard they were going to do that, I was like, you guys are going to get creamed by all the stations in Grand Rapids. And I was very wrong about that. The other thing, too, the Grand Rapids stations, we always kind of wanted to be a Grand Rapids station. And so I listened to a lot of Grand Rapids radio.
Right.
And boy, there were some talented people over there, too. I was listening to, there was a guy, Pellegrini, I think is his last name. John Pellegrini was the imaging / production guy at KLQ. Okay. And that guy made some unbelievable imaging and commercials there too. So I was doing a lot of learning by osmosis from the other radio stations too. It's so weird to think that maybe people were kind of listening to us and saying, "Whoa, those are the guys, that were really making it happen." And I was kind of totally oblivious to the fact that we really had that kind of a presence in that town. I was just having fun, but didn't realize that other stations didn't like us, and I didn't realize how much fun we were having until I actually was gone. It was so weird. It was,
yeah. Same with me. Yeah,
so weird.
Because it was the dream station, so to speak, when you first went there, and I couldn't believe that when I left. It was like, why did I leave?
Yeah, and even the Bob Goodrich, for all the interesting things about Bob Goodrich, and I can tell you the story about how he would come in and throw everything away that was, if anything in the building was over 6 months old, he would throw it away, and then after he left, we'd all go out to the dumpster and pull everything back out again because we needed it. But I remember when I got that job there, I was paid $17,600, full health coverage, dental. Yeah. Didn't have to pay a dime for that. And I've never worked at a station that's ever done that ever again. Right. And I just thought that was a zillion, just a ton of money. And I just thought that was just amazing. And I thought every radio station, everybody was paid that much, and and all of that. And it was just I just wish I could go back. It would really be.
But now, as far as the imaging goes, I mean, people don't realize how important that is for a radio station. And, Sunny FM was one of the best as far as the imaging goes, and maybe that's why we all loved you so well, because you did such a phenomenal job on some of those promotions we had. And
I tell you,
all the stuff that we did.
I put it all together. Like the promos were usually written. Some of the best stuff was written by Jim Richards, the program director guy. We had that, was it the Sunny Money Sticker Man? Where it was a guy made out of stickers. I guess he was the character, and I remember having to come up with sound effects and stuff for that. And Jim would write these really funny promos, and then I'd get Jeannie in to be it. And I still got copies of some of that stuff. And there's even some stuff that I did. I'm like, geez, how did I do that? I'm just still trying to figure out.
If you think it's hot at the beach, just wait till you get to Let's Dance. Wednesday nights are sizzling.
So get there early. College night is Thursday night at West Coast Cafe. Plus, it's also Coors Light night. Get Coors Light long necks for $1. Every seat in the house brings you up close to the play-by-play. Helmet banging action. Now that's one sweet sale. Okay, let's go back outside and recap. JCPenney is having one sweet sale today only. You just go in.
Hi, welcome to JCPenney. We're having one sweet sale.
Yes, I know. May I have a candy bar?
Well, sir, I just gave you one less than 30 seconds ago.
Yes, I know, but see, I'm doing a radio
I'm
commercial.
sorry, sir. One candy bar per person.
It's JCPenney's one sweet sale today only.
The Orbit Room. Show us your fetish. Skip the cover charge. Take a trip to the dark side. Thursday nights at Club Fetish. Only at the Orbit Room.
What's your fetish?
The NCAA Finals are on the Sports Fan.
Stop, pops a three, good! That way shooting a three, good! Dumps in the front court, bounces to Roto, reverse slam, good!
Slam dunk your radio to the Sports Fan AM 1600 for live NCAA Finals coverage.
Bradley rebounds, puts it up and in!
Termites and carpenter ants are back on the job, but O'Malley's Pest Control can help before the little crawly things get inside.
Hey, Carl! Look at that 2x4! Just think, all that high fiber we need, and great taste, too!
Ah, the joys of car shopping in the winter.
Now it's just over this snowbank. It's hard to see with all the snow on it. Listen, while I scrape the windows, why don't you two do some jumping jacks to keep warm? 1, 2, 3.
Newmarket, Redhaven, Holland Beach, wherever wants to be reached. Time for Sunny FM's Beach Report.
Grab your fire It's coming.
A lot of that, but we also had some really talented people, the voice people that we hired to do those, Brian James and Mitch Craig. Those guys were phenomenal, just talented. Brian James, who's no longer with us, was at that time probably the premier voiceover guy in the country. I can't tell you how many radio stations he was doing, but he was doing almost everybody. That guy would read a piece of copy, and I would hear it because he would send it to us on tapes, and then they would FedEx it overnight. He was doing so many radio stations that the guy was helping them. They just basically had a little reel and a big fat reel.
Yeah.
So the big fat reel would be feeding the smaller one, and he would basically hear him pick up the piece of paper from the fax machine, and he would just start reading the stuff cold. Didn't even practice, and he sounded that good. And he only did it one time. And then once he was done, you'd hear the guy go, okay, we're done with that one. And you'd actually hear the guy cut the tape with the thing, and it would go into the package, and off it would go. And Mitch Craig was another guy that was just the voice guys that were so talented. And this is another part of the radio industry that a lot of people, when I tell people I do imaging, they still don't quite understand what I'm doing. And I didn't realize how much of an impact that all had. Even the imaging libraries that you use, the sound effects, the whooshes and the stings and the music beds and all of that. And then just editing it all together. There was, when I first started, you did a lot of stuff by cutting the tape and taping it back together. But then that multi-track, that 4-track we had in the thing, you could then start sort of edit kind of in real time, but you were like, queuing stuff up and backing the tape up and hitting record at just the right moment and letting it start. And if it didn't work, doing it over and over and over again. The average...
That's when it was work.
Yeah, it was. An average commercial would take me probably an hour to make. Now, when I do a commercial, I do commercials now in 5 minutes.
Right.
Because of the computer software. I think we were also one of the first radio stations, at least in the market, to get a digital enter. We had one of those DM80, Roland DM80s, which was a digital 8-track with a really small screen. And I remember we got it, and nobody knew how to use it, and nobody used it. And then one day, this kid came in by the name of Dave Cudahy. He was helping out Gene Gregory on the rock station. And I walked by the studio, and I heard this amazing sound come out of it, and I popped my head in and I go like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just making some imaging for rock. And I'm like, play that. And I was like, you got to show me how to use this thing. You got to show me. And I made some, this is when Jurassic Park came out, and we made a sweeper to give away movie tickets. And I remember I made my first promo was for those tickets, and it was like, you could put everything where you wanted it. You didn't have to, guess or beat mix or anything like that. You just put it right up there. But the imaging on that, and they just let us go hog wild on that. I don't think I ever... In fact, nobody ever told me, you need to pull it back a notch. If anything, they were always say like, dude, can you make that even better? I'm like, well, I'll go back in there and try.
Until you got to MUS. But anyway.
And then MUS, and I did a lot of imaging there. And it was, a lot of times it was like, okay, you need to back that. That's actually, I don't know, they didn't ever say, but it was like, that's too entertaining is the way it kind of felt. But I did do one project there at MUS that was, I always wanted to try this, and I'd never done it, but a police officer had been tragically killed. And this is back in the days. In fact, Sonny did it with the Persian Gulf War, where we would mix down those songs like Miles Away from Winger with like vocal drops in it. And I thought maybe I should do some kind of a vocal drop thingy with that. And I found an Alabama song, Angels Among Us, I think. And I got all the audio I could get from TV stations and radio stations about this guy and everything that happened. And I even had, I think I had the police call, from what had happened and all that. And I mixed this thing all down in one night. And I got it, I was like, wow, this thing's perfect. And I must have cried while I was making this thing. It was so hard to make, and it was so emotional at the same time. And I remember we got a phone call from the family or whoever was putting on the funeral, and they wanted a copy of that song to play at the funeral. And I thought, wow, that was one of the few times where I went, wow, this kind of makes a difference in people's lives. You can sort of touch some people. I also thought the other thing about touching people was how many phone calls did you get from people asking you for personal advice on their life because they thought that you were on the radio that you had some sort of
magical power.
Yes, I was completely blown away because especially when I started my the first job there at Sunny, I think I was 25, and I really hadn't done a whole lot of anything, and people were asking me like, I got this relationship, and my wife and I have been married for 25 years, and I'm like, dude, I can barely hold on to a girlfriend for 2 minutes. And the prize pigs. Yeah. There was a guy that could, I don't know how he did it. And I even asked him, like, what do you do? He goes, I don't know. I just dial the phone and I'm on the right caller. All the time? He goes, yeah, all the time. Yeah. And they would try to sneak in with different names, different voices, all of that. Yeah,
I've got some cousins in Wisconsin that are prize pigs. They go everywhere in Wisconsin.
And then I didn't know that was actually a thing until I think I saw an episode of like 60 Minutes where they show people and they've got like rows and rows of phones and they're, in fact, when I was down in Cincinnati, there was a lady that would show up at all our remotes and appearances, and she would come and she'd have this notebook, and she'd show up and she goes, well, what kind of stuff do you have? And we'd keychains and all of this other stuff, and she'd she'd pull out her book and she'd kind of this, and I go like, do you listen to our station? Not really. No, I go like, where are you going next? Well, so-and-so's Warm 98's doing a thing over here, and these guys are, and that's what she did on the weekend. She had a notebook, and it was all, where to be at what time and all of that. And people would stop by and eat. I think one of my favorite things, what I thought was funny was we had a hot dog machine Sonny did at one point where you boiled the hot dogs. And people would show up, and we would, a 25-year-old guy is loading up this hot dog machine with hot dog, and people would come up and eat hot dogs, and we'd have all that hot dog water, and it just looked like the grossest, and people were like, I can't get enough of this,
free.
People would plan meals, bring their families,
free
down.
Muskegon was a big thing, man. You said free, it's like, I'm there.
That's the other thing too. What we could get people to do for a T-shirt, blew me away. In fact, I remember they got a girl to come in. I don't know why she came into the radio station. She was wearing 3 bumper stickers strategically. And I was like, this, and she just wanted a T-shirt, and it was just, we actually had a joke that we could probably get people to, like, if somebody had a really nice car, we could get them to just drive it right into Lake Michigan for a T-shirt. We couldn't, it was amazing what we do. And even we played the basketball games as the Sunny Slammers. Right. The crowd response, the further away we'd get from the radio station, we showed up this one place. I think we were playing in a cafeteria, so there really wasn't any seats. And this place was absolutely packed. I mean, they were on the floor. We couldn't even use the whole floor because they were standing there. And, and we would play the teachers. And of course, the whole objection, the whole thing was, don't beat the teachers. We would try not to beat them. And most of the time we didn't because, JoJo was a really good basketball player. And I played basketball in high school. And I was usually way tall.
6'4".
That kind of helped. But, it was all about, the dog and pony show. We were always trying to do goofy things and things of that sort. But some of these teachers would take us on like it was like we were in the NBA. I remember getting hurt, people kneeing you or hitting you in the groin or whatever it was, because it was like hardcore, But the further away we'd get, and we would sign autographs until my hands got sore. And I would have people show up years later. I had a kid show up one time at a remote somewhere, and he says, hey, I got this, and it had my autograph on it. I would do this Ranger Bob with 2 big exclamation points at it. And he had saved that and had it mounted in a frame. And it was like his prized possession. He goes, do you remember when you did that? And I'm like, yeah, dude, you still have that? No. But it was interesting how you touch some of these people. I just never thought that could be. And then I did. I ended up.
That's why you were hated by every other station.
I guess so.
Everybody loves Sunny FM.
I guess so. And to maybe finish this out, I remember my parents. I used to listen to the radio a lot and not study.
Okay.
And so they would come into my bedroom. I'd be wearing the headphones, listening to, at that time, when I lived up in Cadillac, if I wasn't listening to WATT, I was listening to KHQ out of Petoskey, Charlevoix.
Okay.
And in fact, Bill Vogel was the morning show, and he called himself the captain. I actually know him now because he does voice work like I do. So it's interesting how it all kind of came around. And they said, take your headphones off. And I took my headphones off. They said, where are you going to find a job where you sit around all day and just listen to music?
Yeah.
And I found it.
Oh, yeah.
I did. I literally found it. And actually working in radio for the last, I started full time in '89 and just got done here, 31 years. It was the best job I ever had, and I can't believe how lucky I was to do that and then do it for that long. I'm so glad I listened to myself. Don't do computer, because I ended up working with computers anyways, but just do what you like, and that'll all work out. Like I said, my the amount of money that I made was far beyond what I ever thought I really should be. I still couldn't believe that I was getting paid.
Yeah.
To show up to do that, even at the end. There at the radio station, and of course, all the talent, the famous people that you meet, all the talented people, the friendships, and then of course the history, of learning about what other people have done. It's fascinating, and I'm so glad that you've done this, kind of made this, and you picked it's interesting that you picked that particular time when it was just the beginning of my life and the most fun that I ever had in radio. And I do believe at that time that was probably one of the best radio stations, not only that I worked at, but probably one of the best radio stations ever.
Right.
From where, VIC in Lansing, I thought and at that time they were hitting on all cylinders, but we were hitting, on all cylinders there for, I would say, between 89 and 93 was like, that was, it just seemed like it just was working, and it was just fun. And I couldn't wait to get to work, and I hardly ever went home. Drove my wife bananas. Are you coming home? Yeah, I'll be right there. And then 2 hours later, because,
But it was one of those stations where people thought it was just a bunch of guys having fun, and there was no format. But there was pretty well. I mean, it was pretty well organized.
It wasn't from where I sat.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I knew what. Okay, I'm going to be
trying to be nice.
I'm going to be playing these songs, right? These songs I will be playing. And it was the first time I remember working at a radio station where I couldn't play what I wanted, because usually you could you played some of the stuff, but then you could play. But this was like but I didn't care. It was like, well, I love that song. That song's great. Yeah. Oh man, I'm playing that one too. And I still remember that. I might even have copies of the sheets, that we had that told you what song to play, and even queuing up the CDs and all of that, and having to hit all the buttons, to start the next event, and talking up intros.
What's this? I was going to say intros. My favorite one, John Cougar Mellencamp, or John Cougar at that time. I Need a Lover. Guy that, a 36-second
goes on forever. Yeah. And I would even talk up the intros of commercials. Meyer had a 6-second uptick on there, and I remember somebody comes to me and goes like, "What are you doing?" I go like, "It's a 6-second. Look at it.
I could talk."
I actually wrote it out. 6 seconds, and there's the time and all that. And then and like the beach reports, that was I think it was 18 seconds. You had to give the beach report and the weather report, and then you had to And I remember we used to have contests at the radio station, who could nail it the best.
Oh, yeah.
And there was the Chris Thompson was the absolute. He would be so far. He would get into it, and he'd be off in left field, like 9 seconds into it, and I'd be like, "There's no way he's coming back from this one." Yeah. And he would bring it back and just nail it. The Romantics, What I Like About You, was one of my favorites, because it's got little things, and of course to find out that everybody who was listening to the radio station hated it when we talked over the. I think we were the only ones that really liked doing that. But trying to condense your, and then when you'd be air checking, somebody's telling you, okay, you need to condense that down to this and say that and do that, and don't do that with your voice, and start the song at this point, and we're actually really overthinking it. But man, it was fun. It was awesome. Yeah, awesome.
You know, Santa here, and I'm getting pretty tired of falling down these chimneys and stumbling around at night. Ooh, owie!
A Bigfoot pizza over there from Pizza Hut. No, shh, we're trying to hunt.
Wait, you've got a Bigfoot pizza?
Yeah, no, shh, there's a deer right in my scope.
Well, shoot. Let's eat.
Oh, man, I missed the deer.
Commander Armstrong, this is NASA. Do you copy? We have landed on the moon. But there's one small problem, however. Engine trouble? No. Spacesuits? No. What is it? We forgot to flag.
It's coming from Domino's Pizza. Can you hear it? It's not just big, it's huge.
They're cocked and loaded and coming to Valdu Lakes. It's 38 Special.
Just hold on loose, me and my fantasy girl. Nobody like you.
Don't miss 38 Special at Valdu Lakes. Saturday, July 11th.
Rockin' Road Cycle. Rockin' Road Cycle. I wonder what the ROCK stands for.
Rock stands for taking your mountain bike off-road, dude, on a suicide mission through the woods.
And look, the sign says they're all $5 off. These would be perfect for that special day coming up.
Hog Day?
No.
The Superman celebration?
No. Look, Spikes has these casual knit and golf shirts in every color and pattern. This would go great with that pair of shorts, and I could wear them on that special day.
Magna Carta Day? Barry Manilow's birthday?
Oh, boy.
I got your attention now, didn't I, Jack?
Find out this weekend. What do you do with a bus ready to explode? What do you do with a gun to your head? Speed. Come on! This weekend at the newly remodeled Holland 7. They're all here. If it's too loud, you're too old for the blaze. Lock it in and rip off the knob. Only you can prevent forest fires, but you can't stop the raging inferno of the blaze. Hand me that fire extinguisher. I think my pants are on fire.
So be there. Coors Light and the new Coors Arctic Ice will be on special. Join Rock 101.7 tonight at Jalapeno. You could be going to the Rockies to see ZZ Top.